At a family dinner, my sister smirked. Mom and Dad said I'm moving into your house. The daughter they always used smiled. Funny, I sold IT for $740,000 last week. Then I slid the papers across the table. His face turned white. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how I finally got my revenge on a family that never saw me as anything more than a safety net. It started 32 years ago when I was born. My parents, Linda and Robert Chen, had been trying for years to have children. When I finally arrived, they were overjoyed. For about 3 years, anyway. That's when my sister Emma came along, and suddenly I became invisible. Emma was everything I wasn't. Where I was quiet and studious, she was loud and charismatic. Where I worked hard for decent grades, she barely tried and still managed to charm her teachers into passing her. Where I saved every penny for my part-time jobs, she spent money like it grew on trees, knowing Mom and Dad would always bail her out. The pattern established itself early and never changed. When Emma crashed her first car at 16, my college scholarship was reduced due to a paperwork error with my grades, and I was asked to take out additional student loans so the family could help pay for Emma's replacement car. When she got arrested for underage drinking, I was the one who had to pick her up from jail because Mom and Dad were too embarrassed. When she dropped out of college after 2 semesters of partying, they asked me to let her move in with me so she could figure things out. I said yes every time. Because that's what good daughters do, right? They sacrifice for their family. After college, I worked 2 jobs while living in a tiny studio apartment, saving every dollar I could. Emma, meanwhile, bounced from job to job, relationship to relationship, always landing on her feet because she knew someone would catch her. Usually me. When I was 29, I finally had enough saved for a down payment on a small house in a decent neighborhood. It wasn't much, a 2-bedroom ranch-style home built in the 1970s, but it was mine. I remember the day I got the keys, standing in the empty living room, crying with joy because I finally had something that belonged to me. Emma's reaction when she saw it was typical. "It's so small," she said, wrinkling her nose. "And the kitchen is so outdated. You should have waited and saved more money." But I love that house. I spent weekends painting walls, refinishing the hardwood floors, and slowly updating fixtures. I planted a garden in the backyard and installed a fence. I made it a home. Of course, Emma ended up living there anyway. When she was 26, she got evicted from her apartment for not paying rent. Mom called me crying, begging me to let Emma stay just until she gets back on her feet. Against my better judgment, I said yes. Emma moved in with 2 suitcases and promised it would only be temporary. That was 3 years ago, when I was 29. Now I'm 32, and Emma is 29. In those 3 years, Emma treated my house like a hotel. She never cleaned, never bought groceries, never contributed to utilities. She threw parties when I was working night shifts, leaving me to clean up the mess. She brought home different guys every few weeks, some of whom made me genuinely uncomfortable. When I tried to talk to her about boundaries, she'd run crying to Mom and Dad about how mean I was being to her. The final straw came last month. I'd been working extra shifts at the hospital where I work as a nurse, trying to save money for some much-needed home repairs. I came home after a brutal 12-hour shift to find Emma and 5 of her friends having a pool party in my backyard. My garden was trampled, there were beer cans everywhere, and someone had vomited in my petunias. I lost it. I told Emma she had 30 days to find somewhere else to live. She laughed and said I was being dramatic, that I'd cool off in a few days like I always did. But this time was different. This time, I was done. I started making calls the next day. I'd been thinking about selling the house for months anyway. The neighborhood was gentrifying rapidly, and property values had skyrocketed. The little house I bought for $180,000 6 years ago was now worth over $700,000. I met with a real estate agent named Jennifer Martinez, a sharp woman in her 40s who took one look at my property and whistled low. "This is going to sell fast," she told me. "The market is insane right now, especially for houses in this neighborhood. With a little staging, we could probably get you asking price or higher." I told her I wanted to move quickly and quietly. No for sale sign in the yard, no obvious showings while Emma was home. Jennifer nodded knowingly. "Family situation?" she asked. When I confirmed, she said, "I've handled a few of these. We can do private showings and market it mostly online. How soon do you want to close?" "As soon as possible," I said. Jennifer wasn't kidding about the market being crazy. We listed the house on a Thursday at $729,000. By the following Tuesday, I had 5 offers, 3 of them over asking price. I accepted an offer for $742,000 from a young couple who could close in 3 weeks with minimal contingencies. During those 3 weeks, Emma was completely oblivious. She was too busy with her new job at a boutique downtown and her latest boyfriend, a guy named Kyle who played guitar in a band that practiced in my garage without permission. She barely noticed when I started packing boxes, telling her I was just organizing when she asked. I didn't tell my parents either. I knew they'd try to guilt me out of it, or worse, they'd warn Emma. I'd learned over the years that my parents couldn't keep secrets from their favorite daughter. The closing went smoothly, though it took longer than expected due to some paperwork delays with the buyer's lender. I signed the papers in Jennifer's office on a Wednesday morning 3 weeks after accepting the offer, officially transferring ownership to the young couple. After real estate commissions, closing costs, and other fees, I netted $697,000 from the sale. They were so excited, talking about their plans for the kitchen renovation and how they wanted to expand the garden. It made me happy to know the house was going to people who would love it. Mike and Jessica Patterson were both teachers in their early 30s, and they reminded me of who I used to be: hopeful, hardworking, and grateful for what they had. Jessica kept looking at the pictures of the house on her phone, pointing out little details to Mike. "Look at these built-in bookshelves in the living room," she said. "And the way Sarah refinished these hardwood floors, they're gorgeous." It warmed my heart to hear someone appreciate the work I'd put into that house. Emma had never once commented on the improvements I'd made, except to complain that the renovations were loud or messy. As I handed over the keys to Jennifer, Mike shook my hand. "Thank you for taking such good care of this place," he said. "We can tell it was loved." "It was," I replied, and meant it. After the closing, I treated myself to lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place I'd never been able to afford when I was supporting Emma's lifestyle. I ordered a salmon and a glass of white wine, and sat by the window watching people walk by. For the first time in years, I wasn't mentally calculating how much the meal cost or feeling guilty about spending money on myself. The waitress, a young woman about Emma's age, was attentive and professional. When she brought my check, I left her a generous tip, something I'd rarely been able to do, and every extra dollar went toward Emma's expenses. That evening, I packed the last of my belongings into my car and a small U-Haul trailer. I'd already put most of my furniture in storage and found a furnished apartment across town. The apartment was smaller than my house, but it was in a secure building with a doorman and a fitness center. Most importantly, it was mine alone. As I packed, I found myself going through memories along with my belongings. There was the photo album from my college graduation, me standing alone in my cap and gown because Emma had been too busy to come and Mama and Dad had to leave early to pick her up from a party where she'd gotten too drunk to drive herself home. There were birthday cards I'd bought for myself over the years because no one else remembered. There were bank statements showing years of overdraft fees because I'd lent Emma money I couldn't afford to lend. Each item told a story of sacrifice that had gone unnoticed and unappreciated. Emma was out with Kyle, so I left her a note on the kitchen counter: "Emma, the house has been sold. You have until Friday to move out. The new owners take possession on Monday. Sarah." I also left her a copy of the eviction notice I'd filed with the sheriff's department, just to make sure she understood this wasn't a joke or an empty threat. Before I left, I walked through the house one last time. In the living room, I remembered painting the walls a soft blue color and how proud I'd been of how it turned out. In the kitchen, I recalled the weekend I'd spent installing new cabinet hardware and how sore my hands had been afterward. In the backyard, I looked at what remained of my garden after Emma's party and felt a pang of sadness for the flowers that had been trampled. But the sadness was mixed with relief. I wouldn't have to worry about Emma's friends destroying my property anymore. I wouldn't have to come home from work to find my space invaded by people I didn't know or trust. I wouldn't have to lie awake at night wondering if the strange man Emma had brought home was dangerous. I locked the door for the last time and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I watched the house get smaller until it disappeared around the corner. A chapter of my life was ending, and I was ready for whatever came next. My new apartment was a revelation. It was quiet, no music blasting at all hours, no friends coming and going at random times. It was clean, no dishes left in the sink for days, no clothes scattered on furniture, no mystery stains on the carpet. It was peaceful, no drama, no emergencies, no one demanding my attention or money. The first morning I woke up there, I made myself coffee and sat on the small balcony, watching the sunrise. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been able to enjoy a quiet morning without worrying about what Emma might have gotten into the night before. I spent the rest of that week settling into my new routine. I went to work without dreading what I might find when I got home. I stopped at the grocery store and bought only what I wanted to eat, not worrying about whether Emma would complain about my choices or eat everything before I got a chance to enjoy it. I watched movies Emma hated and listened to music she'd always made fun of. It was like learning to breathe again. On Thursday, I decided to call my best friend from college, Maria Santos. We'd lost touch over the years, partly because Emma had always monopolized my time and attention during visits. Maria lived in Phoenix now, working as a physical therapist and married to a guy named David who made her laugh every day. "Sarah," she exclaimed when she answered the phone. "Oh my God, I was just thinking about you last week. How are you?" We talked for over an hour. I told her about selling the house and finally kicking Emma out. Maria wasn't surprised. "Honestly, I've been waiting for this day since we were in college," she said. "Remember sophomore year when Emma called you crying because she'd spent her textbook money on a spring break trip? And you worked double shifts at the campus library to send her the money she needed?" I'd forgotten about that, but Maria was right. The pattern had started even earlier than I'd realized. "You were always taking care of everyone else," Maria continued. Your roommate, your study group, your family. You tutored half our nursing class for free and always had snacks in your room for anyone who was stressed or hungry. But when did anyone ever take care of you? It was a question I couldn't answer, because the truth was they rarely did. I'm proud of you for finally putting yourself first, Maria said. And you know what? If you're serious about that condo in Florida, David and I have been talking about relocating somewhere warmer. Maybe we could be neighbors again. The idea made me smile. Having a friend nearby who actually cared about my well-being sounded wonderful. Friday came and went without any word from Emma. I knew she hadn't moved out because Jennifer called to say the new owners were concerned about seeing lights on in the house and a car in the driveway. I assured her that the situation would be resolved by Monday and called the sheriff's department to confirm that Officer Rodriguez would be available for the eviction. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. My phone started ringing at 7:30 a.m. the next morning. It was Mom, practically screaming into the phone. Sarah Elizabeth Chen, what is this nonsense about selling your house? Emma called us last night crying, saying you're kicking her out with nowhere to go. I calmly explained that I'd sold my house and Emma needed to find her own place to live, like any other adult. Mom wasn't having it. You can't just sell the house without telling us. Where is Emma supposed to live? You know she can't afford her own place right now. That's not my problem anymore, Mom. Of course it's your problem. She's your sister. Family takes care of each other. Funny, I said, I don't remember Emma taking care of me when I was working 2 jobs to pay for college, or when I was saving for years to buy that house, or when I was cleaning up her messes for the past 3 years. Mom went quiet for a moment, then said in her guilt-tripped voice, we raised you better than this, Sarah. This is cruel and selfish. No, Mom, you raised me to be a doormat. There's a difference. I hung up on her. It felt amazing. But my family wasn't done with me yet. Over the next few days, I got calls from Dad, from Emma, from my Aunt Carol, and even from my grandmother. They all said the same things. I was being selfish, I was abandoning my family, I should have talked to them before making such a big decision. Emma left me a series of increasingly frantic voicemails. The first few were angry, calling me names and demanding I fix this mess. The later ones were tearful, begging me to reconsider. The last one was pure manipulation. Sarah, I don't know where I'm going to go. I might end up on the streets. I can't believe you do this to your own sister. Mom and Dad are so disappointed in you. I deleted all of them without responding. The Friday deadline came and went. Emma didn't move out. I got a call from Jennifer saying the new owners were concerned because there was still someone living in the house. I had to explain the situation and assure them that Emma would be gone before Monday. I drove over on the following Monday morning with the sheriff's deputy who handles evictions. Emma was still in her pajamas, looking shocked when she opened the door to see me and a police officer. You can't actually kick me out, she said, looking between us. I live here. I have rights. The deputy, a patient man named Officer Rodriguez, explained that she had no legal right to be in the house since she wasn't on the deed or lease, and the property had been sold. He gave her 2 hours to pack her essentials and leave. Emma called Mom and Dad, who arrived within 30 minutes, both of them furious with me. Dad's face was red as he stormed up to me. This is how you treat your family? Your own sister could end up homeless because of your selfishness. Emma is 29 years old, I said calmly. She's had 3 years to save money and find her own place. Instead, she chose to party and spend money on clothes and concerts. Those were her choices. She was getting her life together. Mom protested. By working part-time at a boutique and spending her nights at bars? That's getting her life together? Officer Rodriguez intervened before the argument could escalate further. Ma'am, he said to Emma, you need to pack your belongings now. If you're not out in 2 hours, I'll have to arrest you for trespassing. Emma finally started packing, throwing clothes and toiletries into garbage bags while crying loudly. Mom and Dad helped her, shooting me dirty looks the whole time. None of them asked where Emma was going to go, and I didn't offer any suggestions. When they were done packing, Emma loaded her bags into Mom and Dad's car. As they prepared to leave, Mom turned to me with tears in her eyes. I don't know what happened to you, Sarah. You used to be such a caring, thoughtful girl. This isn't who we raised you to be. No, I replied, this is exactly who you raised me to be. You raised me to clean up messes, solve problems, and sacrifice my own happiness for everyone else. The only difference is that I'm not doing it anymore. They left without another word. I handed the keys to Officer Rodriguez, who would give them to the new owners, and drove back to my new apartment. For the first time in my adult life, I felt free. That was 3 weeks ago. I thought the drama was over. I thought wrong. The first week after the eviction was blissfully quiet. I heard nothing from my family, which was both a relief and slightly concerning. I half expected Mom to call and try to guilt me into letting Emma move in with me at my new apartment, but my phone remained silent. I used the time to start planning my future. With over $700,000 from the house sale, plus my savings and retirement funds, I had more financial freedom than I'd ever imagined. I researched condos in Florida, looking at properties near the beach where I could walk along the shore every morning before work. I investigated remote nursing positions that would allow me to work from anywhere. I even looked into travel nursing programs that would let me see different parts of the country while earning good money. For the first time in my adult life, I was making plans based on what I wanted, not what my family needed from me. I also started therapy with a counselor named Dr. Patricia Williams. I'd been thinking about it for years but never had the time or energy to follow through. Now that my evenings and weekends weren't consumed with Emma's crises, I finally had space to work on myself. Tell me about your family dynamics growing up, Dr. Williams said during our first session. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a gentle manner that made me feel comfortable opening up. As I talked about my childhood, patterns became clear that I'd never noticed before. How I'd been praised for being mature and responsible while Emma was excused for being spirited and creative. How my achievements were downplayed while Emma's minor successes were celebrated. How I'd learned to suppress my own needs to avoid being seen as selfish or demanding. It sounds like you were parentified at a young age, Dr. Williams observed. You took on adult responsibilities and emotional burdens that weren't appropriate for a child. That creates a pattern of people-pleasing and self-sacrifice that can be very hard to break. But I did break it, I said. I finally stood up for myself. You did, she agreed. And that took tremendous courage. Now the work is learning to maintain those boundaries and building a life that serves your own needs and goals. The second week, I started getting indirect pressure from extended family. My Aunt Carol called, ostensibly to catch up, but quickly steered the conversation to Emma's situation. Your mother is so worried about Emma, she said. Apparently she's been staying on friends' couches, moving around every few days. That's no way for a young woman to live. Emma is 29, I replied. Most people figure out their living situations long before that age. But family helps family, Sarah. That's just how it is. Then mom and dad can help her. Or you can. There's nothing stopping any of you from opening your homes to Emma. Aunt Carol went quiet. Like my parents, she was much more comfortable with the idea of me sacrificing for Emma than doing it herself. I got similar calls from my cousin Jennifer and my grandmother. All of them expressed concern for Emma but none offered concrete help. They all seemed to believe that taking care of Emma was specifically my responsibility, as if being her older sister made me her permanent guardian. The third week brought more direct pressure. Dad called while I was at work, leaving a voicemail that was clearly meant to make me feel guilty. Sarah, I hope you're happy with yourself. Emma is basically homeless, moving from couch to couch, and your mother cries herself to sleep every night worrying about her. This isn't who you are, sweetheart. You're the caring one, the one who looks out for others. Please call us so we can work this out. I listened to the message twice, analyzing my emotional response. A month ago, it would have worked. I would have felt terrible and called back immediately, probably offering to let Emma stay in my new apartment just temporarily. But now, after weeks of therapy and quiet reflection, I could see the manipulation clearly. Dad wasn't calling because he was genuinely concerned about Emma's well-being. If he was, he would have taken concrete steps to help her himself. He was calling because having Emma bounce around on friends' couches was embarrassing for the family, and having her live with him and mom permanently was inconvenient. It was easier to pressure me back into my old role than to deal with the consequences of Emma's choices themselves. I didn't call back. Instead, I called Maria, who listened as I vented about the family pressure. They're panicking, she said. For your whole adult life, you've been their get-out-of-jail-free card. Whenever Emma screwed up, they could just send her to you and wash their hands of the problem. Now they actually have to deal with the consequences of enabling her for so many years. I feel guilty sometimes, I admit it. What if Emma really does end up homeless or in danger? Sarah, Emma has options. She has parents who love her enough to let her live with them. She has friends who are apparently willing to let her crash on their couches. She has a job and could get a second one if she needed to. She could find roommates, move to a cheaper city, or make any number of other adult choices. The only thing she can't do is continue living rent-free in a house you worked for years to buy. And that's completely reasonable. Maria was right, but the guilt was hard to shake. I'd been trained from childhood to prioritize everyone else's comfort over my own well-being. The pressure campaign culminated yesterday with Emma's text about the family dinner. The demanding tone, "You better be there," was so typically Emma. Even when she needed something from me, she couldn't bring herself to ask nicely. It was always demands and expectations, never requests or appreciation. But I decided to go anyway, partly out of curiosity and partly because I wanted to see how far they'd go with their manipulation tactics. I had a feeling they weren't just planning to ask me to reconsider, they were planning to ambush me with some kind of solution they'd worked out without consulting me. I was right. Yesterday, I got a text from Emma, "Family dinner at mom and dad's tomorrow at 6. You better be there. We need to discuss this situation." I almost didn't go. I'd been enjoying the peace and quiet of not dealing with my family's constant demands. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what they thought they could possibly say to make me change my mind. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6 p.m. Nothing had changed, the same outdated furniture, the same family photos covering every surface, the same smell of my mom's cooking. Emma's car was in the driveway, which surprised me. I'd assumed she was staying with friends or had found an apartment by now. I walked in without knocking, like I had for 28 years. The family was gathered in the dining room, Mom setting the table with her good china, Dad opening a bottle of wine, and Emma sitting at the table looking smug. "Sarah," Mom exclaimed, rushing over to hug me like nothing had happened. "I'm so glad you came. We have so much to talk about." I hugged her back stiffly and took my usual seat across from Emma. Dad poured wine for everyone without asking if I wanted any, then sat at the head of the table. "Before we eat," Dad said, "we need to discuss this housing situation." Here we go, I thought. "Emma has been staying in our guest room," Mom said, "but that was only supposed to be temporary. She needs a permanent place to live. She can get an apartment like every other adult," I said. Emma rolled her eyes. "With what money? Do you know how expensive rent is right now? I can't afford a security deposit and first month's rent. Then get a better job. Or a second job. Figure it out." "It's not that simple." Dad held up his hand to silence her. "We've come up with a solution," he said. "Emma is going to move back into your house." I stared at him. "What house?" "I told you, I sold it." Mom smiled the way she did when she thought she was being clever. "We know you were just trying to scare Emma into being more responsible. It worked. She's learned her lesson. Now you can call the buyers and explain that there was a misunderstanding." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There was no misunderstanding. I sold the house. Other people own it now. They're living in it. "Don't be ridiculous," Emma said with a laugh. "Nobody sells a house in 2 weeks. You're just trying to teach me a lesson." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder I'd brought just in case. Inside were copies of all the closing documents, the deed transfer, and the wire transfer receipt showing the $742,000 deposit into my bank account. "You want proof?" I said, sliding the papers across the table. "There it is." Dad picked up the documents and started reading. His face went pale as he realized they were real. He passed them to Mom, whose hands started shaking as she flipped through the pages. Emma grabbed the papers from Mom and stared at them. This can't be real. You didn't actually sell the house. You couldn't have." "For $742,000, I said calmly. "Closed last Monday. The new owners are lovely people named Mike and Jessica Patterson. They have 2 kids and a golden retriever named Charlie." The room went completely silent. Emma's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and panic. Mom looked like she might faint. Dad just stared at the papers. Finally, Emma found her voice. "You actually did it. You actually sold the house." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "How could you do this to me? Where am I supposed to live?" "That's your problem to figure out," I said. "Just like it was my problem to figure out where to live when I was 18 and you weren't. Just like it was my problem to figure out how to pay for college when my fund went to buy you a car. Just like it's been my problem to figure out everything else while you coasted through life expecting other people to take care of you." "But you're my sister," Emma wailed. "You're supposed to help me." "I helped you for 3 years," I replied. "I gave you free housing, free utilities, free food. I cleaned up your messes, paid for things you broke, and put up with your friends and boyfriends treating my home like a frat house. I helped you plenty. Now it's time for you to help yourself." Mom finally found her voice. "Sarah, this is extreme. Yes, Emma needs to be more responsible, but you didn't have to sell your house. You could have just given her a deadline to find her own place." I did give her a deadline. Several of them, actually. She ignored all of them because she knew I'd never follow through. Well, guess what? I followed through this time. Dad was still staring at the closing documents. $697,000, he said quietly. "You made over $500,000 in profit." "I did. And you know what I'm going to do with it? Whatever I want. I'm thinking about buying a condo in Florida, maybe a small place near the beach. Somewhere warm where I can finally relax without worrying about who's going to need me to solve their problems next." Emma's tears turned to anger. "This is so selfish. What about family loyalty? What about taking care of each other?" I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "Family loyalty? Like when you borrowed my car and crashed it, then expected me to pay the insurance deductible? Like when you used my credit card to buy clothes and forgot to pay me back? Like when you threw a party that resulted in the police coming to my house and me getting a citation for noise violation? Those were accidents. Accidents that I always had to clean up. When has anyone in this family ever taken care of me? When I was working 16-hour days as a student nurse, did anyone offer to help me with groceries or laundry? When I was saving every penny to buy a house, did anyone offer to help with the down payment? When I was stressed out and exhausted from working extra shifts to pay for Emma's lifestyle, did anyone ask if I needed support? The room went quiet again. Because the answer was no, and we all knew it. I have been taking care of this family my entire adult life, I continued. I have sacrificed my time, my money, my peace of mind, and my happiness to make sure everyone else was comfortable. And not once, has anyone asked what I needed or wanted. Mom's voice was small when she spoke. We always appreciated. No, you didn't. You took it for granted. You assumed I would always be there to fix things, pay for things, clean up messes. You never appreciated it because you never had to think about it. It was just Sarah's job to handle everything. I stood up from the table. Well, I quit. I'm resigning from my position as the family cleanup crew. Find someone else to solve your problems. Emma stood up too, her face red with anger. You can't just abandon your family. Watch me, I said, and started walking toward the door. Sarah, wait. Dad called out. Let's calm down and talk about this rationally. Maybe we can work something out. I turned back to face them. Work what out? Emma needs a place to live, and I no longer have an extra bedroom to offer her. That's the beginning and end of it. She's an adult. She can figure it out like every other adult in the world. But she doesn't have anywhere to go, Mom pleaded. Then maybe you should let her live with you permanently. Put your money where your mouth is about family loyalty and taking care of each other. The suggestion clearly horrified them. Emma had been staying in their guest room for 3 weeks, and I could see the strain it was putting on their marriage. Emma's mess and chaos was a lot easier to deal with when it was happening in someone else's house. That's not a long-term solution, Dad said carefully. Your mother and I are planning to downsize soon, maybe move to a retirement community. Sounds like a personal problem, I said. Emma's voice turned desperate. Sarah, please. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I took advantage of you. I'm sorry I didn't help around the house or pay rent. I'll do better, I promise. Just, please don't leave me with nothing. For a moment, I almost felt bad for her. She looked genuinely scared, and despite everything, she was still my sister. But then I remembered all the times she'd made similar promises before, only to fall back into the same patterns when she got what she wanted. Emma, I said gently, I'm not leaving you with nothing. I'm leaving you with the same thing every other adult starts with, the responsibility to take care of yourself. You have a job, even if it's part-time. You have friends who can help you find roommates or crash on couches while you save money. You have parents who clearly care about you enough to let you live in their guest room. You have options. You just don't like any of them because they all require you to take responsibility for your own life. But I don't know how, she whispered. Then learn. The same way I learned when I was 18 and you were 15 and got all the attention and resources. The same way millions of other people learn every day. Figure it out. I headed for the door again, but Mom blocked my path. Sarah, please don't leave like this. We're family. We should stick together. Mom, I love you, but I'm done being the only one who sacrifices for this family. If you want to help Emma, help her. If Dad wants to support her, he can support her. But I'm not doing it anymore. I gently moved past her and walked out the door. Behind me, I could hear Emma crying and my parents trying to comfort her. Part of me felt guilty for leaving, but a bigger part of me felt relief. I drove home to my new apartment, a small but bright one-bedroom place with a view of the city, and poured myself a glass of wine. For the first time in my adult life, my phone wasn't ringing with someone else's emergency. No one needed me to solve a problem or pay for something or clean up a mess. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was exactly what I needed. I know my family thinks I'm being cruel and selfish. Maybe I am. But I spent 28 years being selfless, and where did it get me? Exhausted, broke, and taken for granted. Emma will figure out her living situation, one way or another. She might have to get a second job, or find roommates, or move to a cheaper city. She might have to sell some of her designer clothes or give up her expensive hobbies. She might actually have to budget and plan and take responsibility for her choices. In other words, she might have to do what I've been doing my entire adult life. And if my parents are so concerned about family loyalty and taking care of each other, they can start by taking care of their younger daughter themselves instead of expecting me to do it for them. As for me, I'm finally free. Free to make decisions based on what I want instead of what everyone else needs. Free to spend my money on myself instead of cleaning up other people's messes. Free to live my life without constantly worrying about who's going to need rescuing next. The next morning, I woke up in my quiet apartment and made myself pancakes for breakfast, something I'd never been able to do when Emma lived with me because she'd eat them all before I got any. I sat on my balcony with my coffee and started browsing real estate listings in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'd done some research and found that St. Pete had a thriving healthcare system, beautiful beaches, and a growing art scene. The cost of living was reasonable, and I could buy a nice condo near the water for less than half of what I'd netted from selling my house. The rest of the money could go into investments and savings, giving me financial security I've never had before. One listing caught my eye, a 2-bedroom condo on the 15th floor of a building right on Tampa Bay. The photos showed floor-to-ceiling windows with water views, a modern kitchen with granite countertops, and a balcony where I could watch the sunset every evening. The building had a pool, a fitness center, and a concierge service. It was the kind of place I'd always dreamed of living but never thought I could afford. Now, suddenly, I could. I called a listing agent, a woman named Susan Rodriguez, who sounded enthusiastic when I explained I was looking to relocate from the Midwest. "This unit just came on the market yesterday," she said. "The owner is motivated to sell quickly because they're relocating for work. I think you'd love it. When can you come see it?" "How about next weekend?" I said impulsively. "I could fly down on Saturday and see it then." "Perfect. I'll set up the showing." After I hung up, I realized I'd just made a major life decision in about 10 minutes. The old Sarah would have agonized over such a choice for months, making pros and cons lists and seeking approval from everyone in her family. The new Sarah trusted her instincts and acted on them. That afternoon, I called my supervisor at the hospital and requested a week of vacation time for the following month. If I liked the condo and decided to make an offer, I'd need time to arrange the move and find a new job in Florida. "Is everything okay, Sarah?" my supervisor asked. "This is pretty sudden for you?" I'd been working at the same hospital for 8 years, and she was right that I rarely took spontaneous time off. Usually, any vacation days I requested were because I needed to help Emma with some crisis or another. "Everything's great," I said. "I'm just exploring some new opportunities." It felt good to be making plans that had nothing to do with fixing someone else's problems. I spent the rest of the week tying up loose ends and preparing for my Florida trip. I researched hospitals and nursing agencies in the St. Petersburg area and updated my resume. I also looked into the process of applying for a Florida nursing license by endorsement. I read about the neighborhoods and local amenities. For the first time in years, I felt excited about the future instead of dreaded about what crisis might come next. On Thursday, I got another call from my cousin Jennifer, who'd clearly been recruited by my parents to continue the pressure campaign. "Sarah, I just wanted to check on you," she said in that fake sweet tone people use when they're about to ask for something. "I heard about this situation with Emma, and I'm really concerned about how this is affecting the family." "What situation would that be?" I asked innocently. "You know, her not having a stable place to live. It's causing so much stress for your parents." "I'm sure it is. Maybe they should help her find an apartment." "Well, that's actually why I'm calling. I was wondering if you'd consider just buying Emma a small place of her own? You made so much money from selling your house, and it would solve everyone's problems." I was so stunned by the audacity of the suggestion that I almost laughed. "You think I should buy Emma an apartment? It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just a small one-bedroom somewhere affordable. Think of it as an investment. You could charge her rent and eventually get your money back." "Jennifer, Emma couldn't pay me $50 a month in rent when she was living in my house. What makes you think she'd be able to afford market rent on an apartment I bought her? She'd be more motivated if it was her own place." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not buying Emma an apartment. I'm not buying Emma anything. I'm done being the family ATM." "But you have so much money now. My money is not available for Emma's housing needs. If you're so concerned about her situation, you're welcome to help her yourself." I hung up on her, too. It was becoming a habit, and I liked it. By Friday, I was looking forward to my Florida trip more than I'd looked forward to anything in years. I packed light, just a weekend bag with casual clothes and my laptop. I booked a hotel near the beach and made dinner reservations at a highly rated seafood restaurant. This trip was purely for me, funded by money that was purely mine, planned around activities I actually wanted to do. It was revolutionary. Saturday morning, I flew to Tampa and took an Uber to St. Petersburg. The weather was perfect, sunny and 78 degrees with a gentle breeze off the water. Palm trees lined the streets, and everything felt relaxed and unhurried compared to the constant rush of the Midwest. Susan Rodriguez met me at the condo building, which was even more impressive in person than in the photos. The lobby was elegant, with marble floors and contemporary furniture. The concierge smiled and nodded as we walked to the elevators. "The owner is asking $425,000, Susan said as we rode up to the 15th floor. "But like I mentioned, they're motivated to sell quickly. I think there's room for negotiation." When she opened the door to the unit, I knew I was home. The views of Tampa Bay were spectacular, stretching out to the horizon in shades of blue and turquoise. The condo was larger than my apartment back home, with an open floor plan that felt spacious and airy. The kitchen was beautiful, with stainless steel appliances and a large island perfect for cooking. The master bedroom had its own balcony, and I could imagine waking up every morning to watch the sunrise over the water. The second bedroom could be an office where I could work remotely or pursue freelance nursing opportunities. "What do you think?" Susan asked. "I think I'd like to make an offer," I said. We spent the next hour going over comps and market data. Susan suggested offering $405,000, which felt reasonable for a property that would have cost twice as much in my hometown. I authorized her to submit the offer that afternoon. That evening, I had dinner at the seafood restaurant I'd chosen, a place with outdoor seating overlooking the marina. I ordered stone crab claws and a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, and watched the sun set over the water while boats drifted by in the distance. My phone buzzed with texts from my family throughout the meal, but I ignored them. Nothing they had to say could ruin this perfect evening. At 9 o'clock, Susan called with good news. They accepted your offer, she said. Congratulations. You're going to love living here. I almost cried with joy. After years of making sacrifices for other people, I was finally making a choice that was entirely for myself. A beautiful home in a place where I could start fresh, away from all the family drama and expectations. I called Maria to share the news, and she screamed with excitement. I'm so proud of you, she said. This is exactly what you needed, a complete fresh start. I'm terrified and thrilled at the same time, I admitted. What if I'm making a huge mistake? Sarah, you've been making safe, responsible choices your whole life, and where did it get you? Taken advantage of and unappreciated. This is your chance to take a risk on something you actually want. Even if it doesn't work out perfectly, at least you'll have tried. She was right. For the first time in my life, I was betting on myself instead of sacrificing for others. It felt scary and liberating at the same time. I sold my house for $742,000, but after all the costs and fees, I netted $697,000. What I really bought with that money was something much more valuable, my independence. And unlike every other sacrifice I've made for my family over the years, this is one I'll never regret. The papers are still sitting on my parents' dining room table, probably being stared at in disbelief. The deed transfer, the closing documents, the final settlement statement, all prove that sometimes the responsible one finally decides to be responsible for herself instead of everyone else. Emma can find her own place to live. Mom and Dad can deal with their own disappointment. And I can finally, put myself first. It only took 28 years, but I'm finally free. And it feels amazing.